Well, thank you all for joining us tonight. We have a record number of attendees in tonight's webinar. About 150 of you have decided to join us. So thank you for taking an hour out of your evening. We have a lot of terrific content, so it might go a little bit beyond an hour. If that's the case, you need to leave early. Don't worry, we will be recording this presentation. We'll be sending you all an email with a link to the presentation, and it'll be hosted on YouTube. So you can always rewatch it or watch it at a more convenient time. If you have any questions during this webinar, then just simply hold on to your question or send it right away. When you send us a question, we will collect all those questions, and then we will go through them at the end of the presentation. I do have a question here. Someone says that they're in listen mode only, and they're wondering if that is correct. You should all be in listen mode only. So the only way that you'll be able to interact with us this evening is by sending us questions by typing it out. Well, with me this evening is my uncle Rick Parmiter. Rick is incredibly qualified to be giving this presentation. He has been a general contractor. He served as one for 23 years. And throughout those 23 years, he built an astounding 250 log and timber homes all throughout Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, and California. So Rick will be the perfect person to guide you through this presentation, and I think we have a lot to learn from him. So there you go, Rick.
Well, thank you very much, Zach. I appreciate the kind words. We're going to start out tonight dropping some stuff on the floor. No, actually, we're going to start out tonight talking about different construction techniques all the way through the process, starting from the foundation on through turnkey, and I'm hoping that it's going to be informational to all. I want to go through different techniques that are very common and used, and kind of hopefully answer some questions that you have when you're thinking about building a log or timber type home. So what we're first going to talk about here is actually foundation types. There's 4 primary foundation types. We have the insulated concrete forms, concrete block, poured concrete walls, and panelized wall foundations. So what we're basically going to start with here is the insulated concrete forms. Insulated concrete forms, you'll see, are basically almost like Legos or blocks. What's happening here is the styrofoam insulation on either side are tied together with plastic ties that hold the 2 layers of styrofoam apart at a certain distance and allow for the interior to be poured with concrete. So basically what the gentleman here is doing is he's building the foundation out of these foam blocks. Once the foam blocks are in place, you'll see rebar that is running through there as well, tying it to the concrete footing. The foam is going to stay attached forever, and basically what's going to happen here then is there's going to be concrete poured into the foam blocks all the way around the entire foundation. What this does is it creates your basement wall. The styrofoam insulation actually remains intact, like I had mentioned, but provides superior insulation from the exterior elements and keeps the heat or cool on the inside as well. So basically, we're creating a concrete wall that's got wonderful insulation. What we like to talk about here, obviously, is the wonderful insulation. Basically, the exterior of the home is going to be covered with a barrier to keep the bugs and the sand and the different soils away from that styrofoam foundation. Keep in mind that it's full of concrete, so there's nothing that's going to be able to get through there. But basically, the interior then, you can apply drywall, you can apply knotty pine, tongue and groove, half log siding, or any other type of wall finishes directly to the foam block. There's ties in there that can be screwed to, nailed to, and that allows for there not to have to be any type of 2x4 wall or furring type wall done up after the fact when the foundation is up. So basically, as far as like your electrical goes, basically what's got to happen is we have to run channels through that styrofoam insulation to run from outlet to outlet or switch to outlet or switch to ceiling light, and that gets channeled out in the styrofoam insulation. And then after that is done, a styrofoam spray foam is being put back into those channels. And then that has to be scraped kind of clean, and then you can apply the wall finish over the top. Now, some of the positives about that particular wall is there's a tremendous amount of insulation value there. It is creating almost a do-it-yourself type look for foundations. It's something that people with good construction knowledge can put together. Some of the issues with it are high cost as far as the actual styrofoam block material, being that it's going to be staying in the foundation, is a little higher cost, let's say, than some of the other ways that we're going to be looking at it, but it does provide that superior insulation value. A few of the other things that I've noticed over the years with building on styrofoam block basements is they're not necessarily as straight or as true as some of the other types that we're going to be talking about. So if you get a little waviness in your foundation, it might not be an issue structurally, but since you're applying the interior finish directly to the styrofoam wall, which is however straight your concrete wall is, that can create some difficulty in the process. Other thing is, we're looking at 2 inches of styrofoam there held together by plastic clips that go through, and that concrete's heavy, and the project has to be very properly braced. So when you're putting the foundation together, we've got to make sure that it's braced straight. And then some of the concerns sometimes are blowouts, where you're filling up the wall full of concrete and all of a sudden one of those concrete blocks gives way. And then you've got a basement full of concrete that's not supposed to be there, or maybe around the foundation that's not supposed to be there. So there are a few concerns with it. It is a very common practice. It's a very energy efficient way of insulating our basement. So it's definitely something that people do talk to us quite a bit about, and something to consider. So we're going to move on to concrete block here. Concrete block is probably one of the oldest forms of building a basement. Basically, we're looking at, when we look at older homes 60, 70, 80 years ago, a lot of times you saw stone being made as foundations, and they kind of came into being, like I mentioned, quite some time ago. And the concrete block masons are very savvy as far as putting the walls together, having them straight. It's a very meticulous type of work, putting the concrete block and building the foundation out of that. I always enjoyed building on a concrete block basement because I knew that it was straight and true, and that's a real positive. Cost-wise on it, concrete block is probably losing a little bit of popularity, which is increasing the price of it a little bit because there's less people out there that have this trade, this skill that is needed for the foundation building of concrete block like this. What I can tell you is soil types and that type of thing are very important to have. I'm going to say more of a sandy type soil, so you don't have a lot of heavy soil which is holding moisture, that type of thing around the foundation, and you don't want that heavy soil expanding and contracting in the north. So that is one of those things that a lot of times the soil type can dictate what type of foundation we're using. Strength-wise, basically we're looking at the home is going to be able to be backfilled like any other one at a certain point, but until the house is sitting on it and the floor system is sitting on the foundation, we don't like to backfill these or bring the dirt in around them all the way up to the top until we have some better support. Once that heavy house is sitting on it, it's not going to go anywhere. But I have experienced, some foundation cracks and that type of thing with homes over the years where maybe we got a little bit too much dirt in it and initially had a little too much frost heave, that type of thing. But I do find that concrete block foundations are very, very much still very popular, but yet again losing popularity a little bit from that aspect. We move on to poured concrete walls, which are probably the most popular type of wall at this point. You're going to look at a basement there that a lot of stuff going on. And when I started building back in the late 80s, I primarily used concrete block. And what I kind of found was the poured wall guys maybe weren't as they were quick and everything, but maybe they weren't as good as the block guys. Over the years, we've seen improvement in the form type systems that are used, but basically, kind of like that foam block, we're putting up wall panels. You can see it on the back of the foundation there, where you can see the different lines. So each one of those panels are put on inside and outside, and then the concrete is poured on the inside of the foundation, which then on the left-hand side, you'll see where the ties go through. Those metal ties are going to remain in the foundation forever. So basically, this wall is going to be poured, and then we're going to peel the forms off of the exterior and the interior. Those ties then are snapped off inside and outside, and then on the inside we have the ability to stud out interior walls and basically build on the inside of that foundation. The exterior of it, we're going to break off those ties, and then generally a polymer type, almost asphalt type spray is going to be put on, something that expands and contracts with the concrete. It expands and contracts with the temperatures and creates a real good seal. I would say that of the last 100 homes I built, probably 90 of them were poured concrete foundations. And they're going to raise it, they're going to range in height from standard 8-foot walls to 9-foot walls to 10-foot walls, in different sizes for different locations. You'll see the garages there are actually, those are normally like a 4-foot footing, but you'll have some different things going on. But a lot of this stuff is very high-tech now, how we put it together. Another thing that's been very popular lately are panelized walls. These are pre-built structural panels that are basically built in a factory, and they're brought out and set with a crane. You'll see in the center of the basement there, it's basically a gravel bed that covers the foundation site, and the panels sit directly on top of that gravel bed. There's generally not any concrete footings underneath it. It's sitting directly on the gravel bed. So that gravel becomes a very solid spot for stop it from settling down into the earth. The gravel locks in with each other, and then the weight of the walls here, along with the weight of the house on the foundation, holds everything in place. You'll see that blue look around the inside. That's actually probably a 2-inch thick styrofoam around the perimeter. And then all the studs you see around the rest of the basement there, that's how you're going to be attaching your interior wall finishes. You're going to be running your wires through there and attaching interior partition walls coming off to form the rooms, that type of thing. Biggest negative I see with this type of wall construction is prior to any backfilling around the perimeter, you can see how it's dug out away from the foundation. Prior to any of that being filled in, the basement floor has to be poured, and also the subfloor system has to be put on top of the foundation. So with that said, it's a little more time consuming putting that subfloor on, because everything is done off ladders or with a crane off ladders, or working on top of those foundation walls, kind of doing the high wire act. So sometimes it's a little bit more detailed early on, getting things to the point where we can push dirt in around it. It's always nice to have a nice smooth working site, so you can imagine bringing in materials to this job site here and having a place to put them and then being able to move around. It can become a little bit of a hassle from that perspective. As we look at the cost differences between the foam block, the panelized wall, the concrete block, and the poured wall, the panelized wall and the foam block are our most expensive options. The block wall and the poured wall are very similar. A lot of times what will happen is we'll have different sites, we'll have different things that we want to use. If we've got heavy soils, I like to use the poured wall. the foam block wall or the panelized wall. I don't like to use the block wall. When we have real nice sandy sites and you have good block masons around, there's absolutely nothing wrong with the poured wall. So at Golden Eagle here and the general contractors that you're going to be working with, we'll help you decide along with what the local situations are for your property, trying to figure out what makes the most sense for you cost-wise and value-wise. As I go through here, I want to kind of keep you in mind of value, what seems to make the most sense effectively for cost, where you want to spend extra money on certain things, or you want to be more basic or normal with construction techniques. Sometimes people can get caught up in doing the new thing or the common thing for green building and that type of stuff. And I trust you that trust me when I say everything that's being done as far as the poured walls and the block walls and the foam and this panelized wall system, they're all very friendly to the environment. They're all done this basically for the same reason and with the same impact to the environment. So when we kind of discuss this, we can definitely increase or decrease your price just starting at the basement. So we're going to move on here, and we're going to talk about thicknesses on slabs and foundation heights. Most basement floors are poured anywhere from 3 to 4 inches in a non-structural situation. So if you have a regular basement floor that there's no weight coming down from floors up above, generally that's in that 3 to 4 inch slab thickness range. Normal techniques have some type of vapor barrier underneath the concrete to keep moisture from rising up through from underneath your foundation up through the basement floor. So now thicknesses can vary depending on how much weight is going on above the structure. Foundation heights, that's increased over the years to make basements and lower level living much nicer, much more reasonable as far as how things get finished off. Foundation heights range again from 8 foot, 9 foot, 10 foot. Depending on the situation, you might only have a 4-foot crawl space, or you'll have a 7-foot wall for whatever reason. Maybe you're close to the water table but still want space down there for storage and utilities and that type of stuff. So every home is looked at in a different aspect as far as how it's going to be constructed and put together. Now there's different types of insulation for the exterior. Two of the foundations come with their own insulation, so nothing is needed to do to those foundations. Again, they cost more in price to begin with, but they do already have the insulation included. So, and basically the stud wall included, because we can fasten our interior finishes directly to the foam wall, and we can fasten it directly to the studs in the panelized wall. So with the block wall and the poured wall, as you'll see on the right-hand side there, that's actually 2x4 stud wall built on the inside of those concrete walls. The nice part about this is everything's normal for the electrical contractor, for the plumber, for the insulator. Everything's normal as far as them being able to run their stuff for it. When we talk about normal or conventional, you got to kind of think of the total cost on things, because anytime things get weird or not commonly used, prices are going to go up because people don't know how to work with them. The most common type of foundation, again, is our poured wall. So when people are doing the studding out of the inside and the plumbing, heating, and electrical, those are most commonly used, so prices on their aspect should be easier. We're not channeling out foam to get the wiring in and all that type of stuff. But the 2x4 insulated perimeter wall can be, or the 2x4 wall can be insulated with fiberglass insulation. It can be insulated with spray foam or a combination. And sometimes these homes, the block and poured walls, we can have styrofoam applied to the exterior of the home. And then the issue with that is then it's got to be, the parts of the foundation that are exposed, it needs to be covered up with something. So that becomes something that we have to consider in our process as well. We're going to move on. You'll see the floor trusses in that same photo. I'm going to page ahead here, and we're going to talk a little bit about floor systems. You'll see the floor truss on the left-hand side. The center one is called an I-joist. It's in the shape of the letter I. The floor truss, in the meantime here, is it's built like a roof truss, but it's flat. So it's It's designed for allowing you to run the mechanicals and that type of thing through. And the I-joist is designed for stronger spans than the conventional lumber you'll see on the right-hand side. And then again, the traditional lumber on the right-hand side is very commonly used in homes today. But the I-joists and the floor trusses are starting to take over as far as the popularity of them. I always say that if you got a squeaky floor, that can take away from the beauty of the rest of the house. So one of the things that I'm always very concerned about is making sure that that floor system is tight. The last thing we want to do is have, as you're walking across the living room floor, having the lamp bouncing over by your wife while she's trying to read in the chair. So we want to make sure that that floor system is structurally built correctly and not have much deflection or bounce. On the traditional lumber, if you can picture, lumber generally has a little bit of a bow to it, or a warp to it, or a crown to it, if you look at it from the edge. Most of the time you like to put that crown of the lumber upward, so all of them are facing the same way. Conventional lumber can move around a little bit as it expands and contracts. The I-joists and the floor truss are a little bit more secure. Now, as far as costs go, conventional lumber, materials-wise, is our least expensive option. The I-joists are next, and then the floor truss is next after that. The benefits to each is, of course, we have traditional lumber floor joists, which are traditional, so it's very easy to for contractors and carpenters. They know how to put them in and all that type of thing. I-joists and floor trusses have become that as well, but it's very easy. They're smaller pieces to deal with. The I-joist is a wonderful product because those top and bottom cords that you see on there, the top and bottom of the I, they're normally a laminated type lumber, which as that nail goes into it, generally a ring shank nail or a screw, that really bonds tight. It doesn't like to wiggle in there. So I find that almost as the best floor joist as far as keeping your floor system tight. Pretty much everybody's very well versed at putting all three of these floor systems in. Now the spans that we can get with the I-joists compared to the floor joists, now by spans I mean, let's say you're down in the basement and you have an open area in the basement that you don't want to have any posts. The spans of the I-joist and the floor truss can span over greater distance than the regular conventional lumber. A lot of times that max width of a clear opening is only going to be 14 to 16 feet with traditional lumber, where we can get upwards of 30 feet wide with floor truss clear spans. A lot of that has to do with how tall they are and how they're engineered. Again, we have to know how this all goes together and what type of weights are on top of it, so we know how to deal with those spans and the structural integrity of the floor system. So if I had my druthers, I like the floor truss for a lot of reasons, because you can run all your piping through and all that. There's spaces for it, even your ductwork, and that can be run through those areas. So the floor joist or the I-joist can be cut through as well. A lot of times there's 6 or 8 inch holes cut in the center. We have to pay a little more attention to where we do that because there's what we call shear points in certain areas. But all three are used a lot in new home construction. I would say the I-joist and the floor truss are my preferences personally, and I've had the least issues and the least callbacks with those type of floor trusses or floor systems, and you'll find that a solid floor, as in your foundation, helps build that solid home. Roof systems are another thing we want to talk about here. How are the roof systems put together? The bottom right-hand corner, you're going to see basically a 2x12, approximately a 24-foot long rafter. All the cuts and decisions on the beam location and the height and all that type of thing are generally handled by the carpenter up on the scaffolding there, properly tied off, I must say. And he makes the cuts, he determines the pitch and all that type of thing. Or if we can go to the pre-made truss, or you'll see the room in the attic type truss, that's determined in a factory. So most of the homes out there have some type of pre-made truss system, but a lot of times in our log type homes or timber homes, we have more open cathedral ceilings like you see on that bottom right hand side. So what we came up to, probably 15 years ago is we're using more of a truss system that we call a parallel cord. And unfortunately, I don't have a picture of it here for you. But the parallel cord, if you're familiar with like a scissors truss, where it's a vaulted ceiling, but the inside and the outside don't match, that's a scissor. A parallel cord gives us the same pitch on the inside, or the same angle on the inside as the outside. So what that means is we can give you roof systems like our room in the attic truss up there that have the same angle inside and outside, which is very important when it comes to the windows that we put in gable ends and that type of thing. Plus it'll give you a little more room inside. Those room in the attic trusses are very nice in a 1.5-story type structure or above garages to give you that extra storage space or possibly living space. The nice part about the trusses is we're not relying on that builder on site to make all the right decisions on angles and pitches and all that type of stuff and whether or not they're structurally sound. So the truss system, in my mind, is the nicest way to go. They go up quicker, and we can adjust for snow loads, wind loads, and all that type of thing. So that's very important. We're going to move on to wall systems. Now, Golden Eagle Log Homes is a company that sells, of course, log homes and timber frame homes, and we build conventionally type homes as well, or sell conventional type homes. So we're going to talk about the different wall systems here. You'll see the conventionally framed, the solid log, the timber frame, and the SIPS panels. So we're going to move forward to the first set here. What you're going to see is the part where it says that where you see the house wrap there, it says Golden Eagle Log Homes. That's a house wrap that goes on the exterior of a conventionally framed structure. Part of the structure is actually full log, and actually part of it's conventionally framed. What I mean by conventionally framed is if you're not currently living in a log home, you're living probably in a conventionally framed home, which the exterior walls are going to have 2x4 walls. You're going to have, or 2x6 exterior walls. Interior walls are generally 2x4 or 2x6 walls. And then we have a OSB wall sheeting on the exterior along with a house wrap, and then the type of wall finish on the exterior that we're going to make the house look like when it's completed. And this home here is going to end up having a half log siding. So the half log siding is going to look identical to our full log there, but it's being applied over the top of a conventionally framed home. You might ask why we do a conventionally framed home when we're building a log home, or why we're doing this section in conventionally framed lumber as compared to the other areas in log, and it comes down to structure. You look at how close that window is to the corner. If I have those short of logs in there, it structurally becomes unsound. So we have to frame those areas with engineered type lumber, so that they go from the floor all the way up so that the wind doesn't push that wall around and it keeps everything tight. So the inside of the home can also be a little bit, gives you a little bit more freedom with one of our half log homes or exposed beam homes. Now page back just a hair here to the home that you see on the picture there. That's actually a half log home on the exterior, but the interior is done with kind of a timber frame look. We call it exposed beam, where those beams are non-structural, but they give you the look of a timber frame type home. So that's gives you the opportunity to maybe have a log look inside, or a timber frame look inside, or a log home outside, or maybe a more conventional framed or look home on the exterior. And then, of course, we're going to talk about full log walls. When you think of log homes, a lot of times you'll think of full log construction, where you'll see there that each log is individual and they're stacked upon each other, and then that makes our wall system. So depending on the situation, our corner logs that you see, the shorter lengths in the front, there's a certain length that we have to maintain, and our engineers determine what that length is. So depending on the home, depending on the situation, logs have to be a certain length for them to be structural. Now the cool part about the log home is as you're setting the logs, you're doing of course the framing because it's log, you're doing the siding, you're doing the insulating, and you're also doing the interior finish all in one shot. Looking at this structure that we're looking at here, it takes about a week, let's say, to build a log structure like that. But again, you're taking care of all those processes at once. As compared to a framed wall, might be looking at 2 days to frame up an exterior of that same home. Then we have to apply the half log on the exterior, and then we have to insulate it. then we have to apply the finishes to the inside. So sometimes the full log walls can go up a little quicker even than a conventionally framed wall. Now the benefits between the two, if we wanted a half log home, but we wanted the inside to look like full log everywhere, that happens. Or if we had a half log home but we wanted more drywall on the inside, I would push you maybe towards that half log as compared to the full log like you see here. But sometimes the structure itself can lend a hand as far as deciding what we're building. You might come into this situation thinking, you know what, Rick, I'm going to build a full log home, and we're getting done with your plans, and maybe there's only half the walls that can actually be full log because you got so much glass going on that we have to do those other areas with structural framing, with covering it up with half log. So there's different reasons for different situations. The full log home, I can tell you, I've lived in 13 of our log homes since I moved out of my father's, and probably half of them have been half log and half of them have been full log. And once completed, they're both wonderful to live in, very quiet, very energy efficient. So there's different reasons for different people to do different things, but both are very, very wise choices. As we look at structural timber frame, the structural timber frame is what you're seeing there. It's basically how the old timber framers actually started out, if I back up a little bit, as boat builders. If you look at the old big boats that used to travel across the oceans, they were basically timber frame homes turned upside down, and those guys became more of craftsmen after they got to our fine country here and building structures. So the timber frame structure has been around forever. And basically the structure of the home, the timbers are holding the home up as compared to, let's say, the conventional walls and trusses holding everything up. The beauty of the timber frame home, the real timber frame, the work that you see, a lot of that gets seen on the inside of the home. So the structural timber frame is a very positive and very exciting way to build a structure. What happens then normally is they get covered up with what we call structurally insulated panels. So the exterior of the home is covered up with SIP panels that become your exterior wall insulation and your finish. And your insulation is sandwiched in between those two layers. You'll see the gentleman lifting up that SIP panel on the right-hand side there. Basically, that's one piece. The windows are cut out generally in a factory, and the SIP panels go over the top of the timber frame. So again, here when we're talking wiring and certain plumbing and that type of thing, it's one of those areas where sometimes it becomes a concern on the costs that you're leading up to. Now, as we kind of refresh our talk here with these different structures, like I said earlier, every time you have something that's conventional, you think cost savings. Every time you make something a little different, you think maybe more expensive. So when we look at a conventionally framed home with half log siding on the outside, or a half log exterior or interior on the inside, all the walls are still conventional. So the plumbing, heating, electrical guys can run all their wiring very easily. No real issues there. The full log structure, as you talk full log, it has some questions that I'm going to answer here about how do you run electrical. Electrical is generally all laid out ahead of time, and the wiring, the holes for the wiring is put in as the logs are being put up, and that is done in that week time frame, a 1 week time frame that I talked about. So those electrical areas are put in. The electrician has basically they're running down into the foundation over to the next outlet and up, and it allows for you to have a very conventional looking wiring diagram or wiring of the home after it's completed. The SIP panel, there's channels that run inside the panel that allow for the electrician to fish his wires through, and then a box gets routed out, and then they slide the box into those panels. And then the sidings or the half log or whatever the exterior of the timber frame home is being used on that gets applied over the top. So I like the full log, and I like the conventionally framed structure probably the best as far as putting it all together and making it easy for the, I always like to say, the plumbing, heating, and electrical guys, because they can dictate how much this project and what direction it's going to be going. So that's very important to make things as easier on the subcontractors as possible. Now we kind of look at costs throughout, you want to know kind of how much your home is going to cost, and how we do the foundation, how we do the floor system, and now how we do the walls all dictate that. So there's different ways to increase the price, and there's different ways to keep the price more reasonable. One of the things that we do to give you that timber frame type look, if you really like the timber frame look, is we do what we call exposed beam. What I like to say there is the exposed beam home, the beams are held up by the home as compared to the home, or the beams holding the home up like a conventionally, or a timber frame home here. So the conventionally framed home with timber frame accents costs quite a bit less to build and to work on as compared to the actual timber frame home. Some people really want to have that structural timber frame, other people just want the look. And we can say the same thing for the full log and the half log. Depending on how you want to finish it, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. Some people have questions on how well do those full logs insulate? How do they shrink? Do they settle? All that type of thing. And here I like to talk about how our logs at Golden Eagle are done. Our full log homes, our half log homes, our timber, our exposed beam, all of our logs are kiln dried down to a 19% moisture content. What that means to you as the consumer is that kiln process is drying the log out to a point where it doesn't expand much more, it doesn't shrink much more. We're eliminating any chance for mold, mildew, any bug larvae that can be in that log. All that's eliminated with the kiln drying process. A lot of companies out there just do an air drying process. And when you think about air drying, think of a sponge. A sponge that's full of water, that's your fresh green tree. The air drying process, that's like squeezing the sponge out. When that sponge is squeezed out, it's fairly dry. That's what you want. But what happens is when it gets humid out again, or you add moisture to it, what you're going to find is that sponge is going to expand again. The kiln drying process, we're actually changing the cell structure within the log. So it's like taking a water balloon and popping it with a pin, or just pulling it apart. And what happens there then is that water balloon can still get wet, but it's not going to hold moisture again. So the expansion and contraction is minimalized. Some log home companies rely on this air dried process. Some build them green and they have springs and other mechanisms, or as a homeowner you've got to come back every year or 6 months and tighten your walls up because they've been shrinking because they're drying. At Golden Eagle we do all that ahead of time. So we're eliminating any potential issues of settling and bugs or anything like that before the product gets shipped or before it gets built. So those are very important things to keep in mind. We're going to move into the guts of the home a little bit. We're going to talk about different types of heating systems. Homes, log homes, timber homes, conventional homes are all heated differently. A lot of people want to be very energy efficient. Energy is a very expensive part of our cost of living. We've got central heat type systems where you're dealing with furnaces, boilers, heat pumps. We see a lot of homes that are done with a forced air type furnace, maybe natural gas, maybe LP gas, or liquid propane it's called. We see some homes that are done with boilers or heat pumps. You'll see on the bottom right there in that picture, those tubing that's running through there, that's prior to concrete being poured over the floor. So that tubing has a fluid running through it, generally water with a glycol mixture, which keeps it from freezing. Let's say if it's running out into a garage or a potentially cold area and running back in, and never freezes up or anything. So basically, I always tell people if your feet are warm, you're warm. So it's important to have, I like having a warm floor, whether it's in a basement or a main floor or even out in the garage. The conventional forced air type furnace is wonderful because we're allowed to use our forced air furnace and the ductwork then for running air conditioning and that type of thing. And forced air type systems are bringing in outside air to the inside, which really help as far as keeping that air circulating. In the old days when homes were very inefficient, the wind would just kind of blow through the house and then it would exchange your airs. Where today with the energy efficiencies that we have to mechanically bring outside air in to keep things fresh. Boilers are generally used in that in-floor heat situation, and heat pumps are basically the same thing. We'll get to that a little bit towards the bottom here. Direct heat, like gas-fired space heaters, that space heater can be a gas unit that maybe in the garage where it's blowing warm air and it's thermostatically controlled. Some homes are electrically done. Depending on your cost per kilowatt and that type of thing, sometimes electric energy is very efficient, especially with the energy efficiencies of the home. Electricity, remember, is 100% efficient. When you talk about, I'm going to say forced air furnaces and gas and natural gas, they'll say 95% efficient, 98.5% efficient. So you're losing 1.5% to 5% before you even start. Where electricity is 100% efficient because it doesn't have any waste to it. The negative about it is a lot of times electric in areas is more expensive, even with that waste, than the natural gas or the LP gas. People like to wonder about wood-burning fireplaces and pellet stoves and actual fireplaces. So there's different types of stoves and fireplaces that you want to be aware of. If you want to heat your home with a unit, we can help you out there. Pellet stoves, of course, you're having to buy the pellets to run that through, and that can be, a cost that is involved in running it, kind of like maybe a gas fireplace. The wood-burning fireplace, maybe you're on acreage and you have plenty of wood around and you want to burn wood. It's a very efficient way of heating your home or heating areas of your home. There's different types of fireplaces, like wood-burning fireplaces. I call them recreational fireplaces, where you have a pretty fireplace and it looks good and everything, but then really doesn't give off a whole lot of heat. And then we've got the units that are a little bit more expensive, but they might go a long way to heating your home. So state-of-the-art heating, that radiant floor heat we talked a little bit about, we see a lot of heated shower floors, shower seats, kitchen sink floor, the tile in front of the floor, and maybe the computer desk area. Maybe you're sitting on tile and you like to have your feet warm, like I said, that area in front of the computer desk. That's something that in an area where you're relaxing or spending a lot of time, again, it's nice to keep your feet warm. Then there's units called ductless, mini split, multi-split. Basically what it is, it's a condenser unit outside. It's electric generally, and each individual room has a unit that's going to heat that room and it's going to cool that room depending on the temperature outside, obviously. But the multi-split units are very nice for certain size homes in certain areas. We talk a little bit, we have people that do geothermal heating and cooling. Geothermal is something that's very popular with people who want to be very cost conscious or energy cautious or energy conscious without using up the Earth's natural resources. What we're doing here basically is we're running tubing at the maybe 10 feet down in the ground. We're running a liquid through these tubes that the ground temperature at about 10 feet down is roughly 55 degrees. So let's say it's 4 below outside, that ground water at that level is about 55 degrees. So to make your house 70 degrees, we only got to warm it up 15 degrees. So the energy it takes to make that water from down below at 10 feet down or 8 feet down, it takes very little energy to mark it up to that 70 degree temperature. Conversely, when it's cold outside or it's warm outside and you want to make the home cooler, that ground is still 55 degrees. So really we're using that 55 degree ground temperature to cool your home. So it's very efficient when it comes to heating and cooling your home. The cost difference between or the cost of geothermal systems can be very high depending on the systems. Some areas offer rebates and different things like that, so it can help bring that cost down. I like to tell people, if you're financing your geothermal system, might not be right for you. Just from the standpoint of spending 4 or 5% on interest rates over a 30-year period, are you really getting the money back on the geothermal system? So there's questions that we're able to help you with, contractors are able to help you make the right informed decision on what type of unit's going to work best in your area. What I like to say is, we talk a little bit about appraisal values. Let's say your neighbor's house has a conventional forced air furnace with regular central air conditioning, and their house is just sold for $300,000, and you have a $350,000 home next door because you have a few more frills like geothermal heating and cooling and maybe a few other odds and ends, and but you have the same square footage, you have the same garage, and you virtually have the same lot. Those two homes, unfortunately, are valued at the same dollar amount. So what happens is, that person that's going to buy your home for $350,000 has to come up with a little bit more of a down payment because that neighbor's home that sold happens to have the same value as yours because their heating system is doing the same thing as your geothermal system, even though yours is maybe a little bit more green. So there's some things to talk about there. There's also an item here called air source heat pumps. Air source heat pumps are actually air conditioners that run in reverse in the winter. So your air conditioner heats your home down to a certain temperature. So that's kind of exciting and fun to talk about. And if you've got questions on these things, by all means, don't hesitate to talk to one of us about it. I'm more than happy to go over it in more detail for area in which you're building. We're going to move on now to types of insulation in your home here. I've got to make sure I'm on the right page. You bet. So we look on the left-hand side of their fiberglass insulation, and the bottom left-hand side we look at blown-in insulation, and on the right-hand side we look there at spray foam. Three different types of insulation, all trying to do the same thing. All three of them can do a good job in the right environment. The key with fiberglass insulation, if you think about it this way, that fiberglass that he's putting in has an R value of 19. It only has an R value of 19 if it's in a sealed pocket where there's no air infiltration coming from the outside. If you've got a crack in your wall sheeting where two pieces come together, or a hole drilled out for electricity, for a light, let's say, and there's air able to get into that fiberglass, really just becomes more of a filter as compared to an insulator. So fiberglass insulation is the most cost-effective way, but it also can be virtually no reason for it if you've got air coming in from the exterior of the home. Obviously the wind barrier, the Tyvek or the house wrap can kind of keep that wind out, but yet it still travels through those cracks. So we want to make sure that when you're using fiberglass insulation that you seal up all those areas. A lot of times here you'll see the blown-in insulation in the attic. It's nice to give it that big blanket that covers everything. So it's covering the joists, it's covering the wires, and it's covering all the things up. Unfortunately, a negative about the blown-in insulation is if you have those same cracks where interior walls meet your ceilings, or there's wires running down into your walls below, air can follow those down and go right through that blown-in insulation. So the key here with all these processes, at least these two processes, is to seal up prior to doing the blown-in or prior to putting the fiberglass insulation in. The spray foam kind of takes care of the whole works. It's giving you the R value that you want, but it's also sealing up any cracks in the substrate, that leads to the exterior. As he's spraying it on there, you're going to see quite a bit of overspray where it gets too thick or thicker than the studs. What happens then is they basically have a machine that'll shave that off and make it flush with the studs. So basic math or basic conscience here says, let's do the spray foam. That seems to make the most sense. It's doing everything. Unfortunately, the cost to spray foam a whole home can be very high. The spray foam product's very expensive, and you say, Rick, what's the best thing here? I like a combination of all three. I like to do the fiberglass insulation in these wall pockets, but I like to spray foam all the potential air infiltration spots with spray foam prior to putting the fiberglass insulation in. And in the attic as well, I like the blown-in insulation, but I like where we seal off those attic spaces where they come down into the main floor to stop that cold from following that traffic, or following the other cold down through wire holes or cracks between the walls and the drywall. So it's one of those things that's very important to do the right thing and to spend the right kind of money on what makes the most sense. All right, here we're going to talk a little bit about decking. Exterior decking on homes can range from treated lumber in you see that center picture there is actually a treated type lumber where it's 5/4 treated decking. That home is our South Carolina plan. It's a beautiful, beautiful home if you look at it on our website. It's got a wonderful picture tour that you can take, but the treated lumber that you see there is actually probably the most reasonable decking. And a lot of you probably have it at home and you think, I want to do the maintenance-free decking next time. On the left-hand picture there, you can actually see a maintenance-free decking. A lot of different products and a lot of different brands make it. On the right-hand side there, you're actually going to see more of a stone deck, which there's regular type floor joists underneath it, beefed up enough to hold on to almost a patio paver on top there. Sometimes we get that patio look on decks, absolutely no maintenance to it. Another option that I'm not showing is cedar. Cedar is basically just like the treated, but it's generally a western red type cedar that gets used for the decking. You want me to tell you what the best route is here? I gotta say it all comes down to cost again. Again, your treated's the most reasonable. Cedar's your next step up. Composite is your next step up, and then when we get over to the stone, that's again another step up. So depending on where we want this house to fit price-wise, there's different things that you can do. The treated deck, left unstained or unfinished, provides a lifetime of use and wear. Once you stain it, I say you have to maintain it. So when you're looking at deck surfaces, I like to leave the treated lumber and the cedar unfinished. Let it weather naturally like this picture in the center has, and let it become a natural wood deck. Then you never have to touch it. Both of them have their own preservatives in it, and you should never have to touch it. Of course, if you want it to look like the composite deck on your left, that'll open you up to maintenance in the future. If you want the look of the composite on the left but no maintenance, then go with the composite on the left. Might be 3 times the cost of the cedar or the treated, but it's going to give you a lifetime of beauty as well. Again, with the stone, that'll give you, of course, more cost than the composite, but it gives you more of that patio feel. And I kind of knew this was going to run a little long, and I hope you stick with me. Got a lot of fun stuff to cover here, and I appreciate you guys' patience and time here. Hopefully you're getting some good ideas. We're going to move forward here to windows. A lot of different types of windows on the market. There's a lot of companies that build wonderful windows. When we look at log and timber homes, we like to bring the outside in. We like to have a lot of glass. We like to have you know, the look of looking out into that beautiful lake, or out into the forest, or over your property, or looking into the woods. That great room that you're seeing there is it's our lake house plan. It's 3,352 square feet on the main floor in the loft, and it's got that beautiful lake. We call it the lake house front. Wonderful glass situation. We can use that look on many different homes, many different sized homes. You're also going to see that walkout basement there with the windows and the patio doors. I tell you, it becomes a whole nother space, another area of living. Then you're going to see a bunch of different colors down there. Now, windows are made primarily of vinyl, fiberglass frames, not the glass, obviously, but the windows are, all the glass is generally very similar. You can get high performance glass, you can get argon filled, you can get different types of panes, you know, all the different types of vinyl, fiberglass, and wooden clad. So the wood window has a metal clad exterior, which is going to give you an opportunity to have a lot of different colors. The lake house there is done with kind of a Hartford green color. You'll see that right below there. That's the color of the service door on the garage. It's the color of the patio doors as well as the windows. Homes also can have fiberglass windows. Basically, the framing is made out of fiberglass then. Fiberglass windows are very strong. They give you more color opportunities, not as many as the wood clad, but more than the standard vinyl. Standard vinyl windows are going to give you a little more cost-effective look. All these are going to be very energy efficient. It just depends on the look that you want to have, or the feel that you want to have. A vinyl window generally are more white and tan. So if you look at this home and picture a tan window, not a bad thing. White, maybe that's going to stick out too much, but that tan kind of blends in with the earthy tones and that type of thing. So there's a lot of different options there on windows. And what we like to do is we like to figure out what you want in a window. All of them end up having wood interiors from where the jamb of the window starts to the trim. They're all going to be wood, but the sashes themselves are either going to be the wood clad unit's generally a wood window, where the fiberglass and the vinyl, they're going to be fiberglass or vinyl, and whatever color the exterior is generally the interior. There are some variations on that, but cost-wise, we look here at the vinyl windows being the most cost-effective or most reasonable, and the fiberglass and the wood clad can be more expensive. But I tell you, there are wonderful, the vinyl windows are wonderful for a lot of reasons, and there's a few different styles that actually get as expensive of the wood as the wood clad or the fiberglass. So a lot of times we can point you in a certain direction. Certain parts of the country, too, are also going to want different things. Florida, we like to use the fiberglass window just because of the extreme temperature changes. the extreme heat out west in different locations. We use different windows. Just depends on where you're at. We might point you in a certain direction. We're going to move to the inside of the house here with, hold on here. Oh, actually, we're going to talk about wood species a little bit. I'm sorry. Our most popular wood species. Golden Eagle, 51 years ago, my father started the company, and we were primarily into white pine. White pine is grown in the north and northeast. It's called eastern white pine. The cell structure in the white pine is very good. It's got wonderful knots. It's got wonderful grain. It's a wonderful wood to work with. It dries very nice, and it's very stable. When I look at some of the faster growth trees like red pine and a few of the other ones, southern yellow pine, they got different graining in them, which can be very difficult to stay stable. And white pine we find is a very stable wood. As far as western red cedar, we do quite a few of them in western red cedar. They're a little bit more expensive than the white pine. Doug fir we've used on many occasions, and Doug fir is a very structurally sound, very strong wood. Very header type material, I'll tell you, it can hold a lot of weight. All these can, but depending on the location in which you're going and how big of a spans you have, sometimes it makes better sense to use one or the other, but I've never really found a place where I didn't like white pine. The western red cedar, it's also a beautiful look, and the Doug fir is a beautiful look. The easiest one of the three to work with as far as a builder goes, with staining and finishing and putting it together, is the white pine. And as far as anything is available. We've done some other different woods as well, so I'll let your imagination run wild there if you have certain things that you want to use. So that's something to keep in mind. When we're looking at pricing on our packages on our website and in our brochure, we figure them all with white pine. Now we're going to move forward to the interior stains and exterior stains and finishes. As you look through those pictures there, you're going to see some different interior looks, some different exterior looks. I'll talk a little bit about how the insides are done compared to the outsides and maintenance and that type of thing. The picture on the upper left there, that's that South Carolina plan that I showed you had the treated wood decking. We did some cool beam work in there. Some custom logs from the site were actually used as kind of some ornamental beams inside there, non-structural beams. But anyways, as far as how the ceilings and walls are stained, the logs are always stained on site. A lot of times we'll get the tongue and groove pine, the knotty pine that you see on the ceilings, the interior doors and the trim. A lot of times we'll pre-do that at a factory, so it's got, you look at a home like this and it might have 10,000 feet of that stuff, and you're thinking about putting 3 coats on it on a job site. It's easier to do that in a factory. So we offer that definitely as a good option from our perspective, and that way it doesn't have to be done on site. The logs themselves are basically have a stain and a couple coats of finish, and the color can vary. You'll see the one on the far left and then the one on the far right, much different in color, but both give you that rich, warm, cheerful, cozy feeling. The second one there has that timber frame look on the inside. That's more of a clear finish on the inside. Now I would tell you it's like a polyurethane finish, but it's more of a water-based type finish today. Very few of them have real oil-based finishes due to the smells that come off it and the toxins that come off it. So we want to be careful with everything that we use that has different glues and all that type of stuff in it. So most of the interior finishes either are regulated by the EPA if they're oil type finishes, obviously, and the water-based finishes, I wouldn't drink them, but if you happen to get a little splash in the mouth, not going to hurt you. But as far as now, we look over at the next one there, and we look at a little bit more of a stone exterior with shiny beams and shiny stain. The shine that you're seeing on there around the trim and the exterior all depends on what type of finishes that you want to use. Some people really like that shine. The bottom left-hand corner, a little bit more of a satin finish. So if you kind of look at those finishes, you're going to determine what type of look that you want. Some people want that really nice, like I said, shine. It really makes it look finished, where more of a subtle look as well is very popular. Again, another picture of that great room there, just a beautiful, beautiful look, that warm, cheerful feeling. It's really a nice feature. That overhang that you see on that one with the stone there, that house faces directly south. And what I can tell you from being in there, and we have a model home that has an overhang similar to that, that in the summer months, the sun being higher in the sky is keeping the sun out of that great room. In the winter, though, the sun's at a lower angle, and that overhang, sunlight is actually going in through those windows and allowing that room to heat up naturally with passive solar heating, which is very, very cool. So putting overhangs and porches in certain areas really can help keep the temperatures and all that at a constant, a little bit more of a constant situation. So that house being faced directly south, if you got hot summer sun beating on it all afternoon, it's gonna be hard to keep that house clean with the proper porch, or clean. It's gonna be hard to keep it cool. So it's important in your design and who you're dealing with. We're not just selling you a package or a home. You know, we're selling you a dream. You know, and we want that dream to be comfortable all year long. The picture on the bottom right is a North Carolina plan, 1,861 square feet with that walkout basement that has cedar shakes up on the exterior. And that's actually, if you look at the one that looks timber frame, that's actually one of our half-log homes, and then it's the timber frame look on the inside. So the gentleman here with this house, he wanted more of that log look. His wife didn't want to have anything to do with it. So she said, I want more of this timber frame look on the inside, and by gosh, they both got their way. So, and then you'll look at that walkout level there. So other things to think about with finishes, as far as how do they last, what do I have to do to maintain them, that type of thing. The interior of the house, basically, it's just normal cleaning. Log homes aren't any dustier, or timber homes aren't any dustier than your conventional home, but proper cleaning and normal cleaning is just very common. You never have to reseal or refinish any of the walls in there because they're not getting any of the real exposures to the wind and rain and snow and all that type of thing. Now, as far as the exterior goes, the exteriors of the home, any home, whether it's a vinyl home, a painted home, a cedar-sided home, a log home, or a timber home, or a stone home, the sun and all the elements are what give you the wear and tear on the home. So when I look at let's say that that North Carolina plan on the bottom right, or I look at the one with the porch on the bottom left, that's actually our country's best home. We look at those two sides. The southern exposure is going to need more maintenance than, let's say, the northern exposure. So the southern exposure, we're looking at adding a maintenance coat to the exterior in approximately 4 or 5 years, depending on how much sun and what kind of abuse it gets. When we look at the shine of the home with the stone on it, once that shine starts to go away, it's time to add a maintenance coat. Now, the maintenance coat really only entails pressure washing or cleaning the logs, not taking any finish off or anything. You're not refinishing anything. The maintenance coat is adding the maintenance or the clear protectant back in, or adding the finish of the stain back into the log. So you're not having to sand and scrape or redo anything. It's basically just reapplying the maintenance coat. Proper pressure washing and cleaning of your home. When I say pressure washing, I'm thinking 3 feet away with the hose blowing any dust off or any pollen that accumulates on the home, like any other home, whether it's vinyl or aluminum or painted. You want to keep that house clean. In log and timber homes, they're no different. The positive part about our log finishes and stuff, whatever color you stain that home, after you add a maintenance coat, it stays the same. So you're not adding color back into the home, or you're not changing the color. So if your south side just needs maintenance, that south side just gets done. Your northeast and west side might not need to be done for 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 years. So it's not like a process where you're restaining or redoing things every 4 years. You're keeping in contact with your home. And I always tell people, don't look at it as a situation where you have to do it as a homeowner. If you want to do it, no problem. But whoever stained it the first time around, a lot of times the builders will put you on a maintenance program, which might be a certain dollar amount every year, or certain dollar amount every time they come and do it. But it's actually very common to see that that maintenance in the, I'm going to say $400 to $600 a year if you budget that. That'll take care of your maintenance as you go through the process. So it's something that we can definitely talk to you about. And again, the proper porching on those west or south sides, west sides, really protect the home. So the finishes that we use today as compared to what we used to use in the early years, much better and much more efficient. So that's something that we want to keep you abreast on. That log and timber homes aren't a maintenance nightmare by any chance, especially the way they're properly done. And a properly dried log, that finish state, it's not fighting against the moisture on the inside. So we do a lot of things here at Golden Eagle that that make sense for not just the structure, but for longevity. The next page here, we're going to talk a little bit about turnkey. We're almost getting done here, folks. So again, I appreciate you holding on. What does a house cost? What does turnkey mean? Turnkey means basically that you build the home, or we build the home, or the general contractor builds the home. All you do is provide the funding, the ideas, you know, your financing, of course, and basically you're turning the key and moving in. So you're not doing anything. So turnkey means that everything's being taken care of for you. In the process of building homes, what's included in turnkey? Well, you just said that it included everything, Rick. When I look at it as a general contractor, I normally do the building permits, the excavation, the foundation, the plumbing, heating, electrical. I handle all that. Of course, all the contractor labor, the drywall, the flooring, the lighting. As a general contractor, I also help you with the septic and well setup and make sure that that's all taken care of. A lot of times we need that information just to get the permits. So a lot of times those costs become associated with turnkey. Landscaping, you might want me involved in that, or that might be something that you take care of. When I say me, I mean in my past life or a general contractor, since I'm no longer building, but I can sure point you in a good direction. So the landscaping a lot of times happens after the general contractors are gone. A lot of improvements such as electric power, sewer, water laterals, and that type of thing, a lot of times will be taken into consideration you know, during that construction process. So a lot of times the general contractor is dealing with that. Now, when we're talking pricing on homes, we have what we call, you know, so many dollars a square foot. We can tell you how pricing is figured for our materials package price times a multiplier. I'll give you a good idea on what that home's going to turnkey for. A lot of times in the initial talking, we're not going to talk septic well landscaping or those lot things. We're going to talk about the house built on a generic lot. And that's about what that home's going to cost. So when we're doing ballparking and stuff, the more information that we know, the more important it is. But our goal here at Golden Eagle is to put you guys in the home of your dreams. And the general contractor can take it as little as you want or as far as you want, or you can do the construction in yourself. And we've guided many, many people that do some or all of their homes you know, through the entire process, and it makes it a real fun deal. So you know, I went through a lot of stuff here, and I know I've got some questions to go over. And again, I appreciate everybody's patience with everything, and we'll go through a couple questions.
Well, thank you, Rick. What an incredible presentation. For those of you that were taking a lot of notes or need to go back and review the presentation, please know that we will be following up with an email. In the email, there will be a link to a YouTube video. And what's great about that YouTube video is you can rewind it, you can take it at a different pace, or come back and review things in the future. And also, another great thing about our YouTube channel is that it shows many of these processes, how the log walls are put together, and how a lot of other behind-the-scenes construction things are done. But Rick, the first question we have here comes from Timothy, and Timothy was wondering if you could speak a little bit about solar systems.
Well, I'm assuming, Tim, we mean solar systems as far as solar energy, not the atmospheric type solar systems. I'm just kidding. That's just the way Zach had mentioned it here. But anyways, we do a lot of homes, especially in certain climates, that solar power is very much you know, an alternate source, or it is a way to bring in extra power. You know, we look, I've got some people that are building off the grid where they don't have electricity to the site, that type of stuff. But just that solar type power is something that is very efficient. Again, we look at the costs related to it in the area in which you're building, so that can be very motivational sometimes on what the state, what the EPA and what the governments will do as far as rebates, because you're using such clean energy like solar. Solar is very, very important to consider, and also so is wind. But a lot of times it's an addition to Sometimes to be completely off the grid can be very expensive and maybe not needed. So I always look at each individual site and try to help the homeowner determine what makes sense. And a lot of times we'll pull in local context. I've got one going in the flat tops west of the Rockies that's completely off the grid on solar power. It's wonderful. So it just depends on the situation. But he also had about 4 miles to run his electricity. So definitely a great question there, Tim.
And then when we were talking about foundations, Chris was wondering, how long will that foam last?
The foam will last forever, provided that it is properly covered with whatever type of membrane that the company that sells the foam block says to use. So we want to make sure that there's no dirt or anything directly up against the foam, because time and bacteria and that type of stuff can eat at that foam over time. So the different companies will have different ways to protect that foam. On the inside, it'll be there forever. No worries as far as that goes.
And then another gentleman, his name is Ed. Ed was asking if with the ICF foundations, when log is applied to that, if the chemicals that you apply to the log, if that compromises the foam at all.
Generally, there will be a vapor barrier put in between the foam and whatever exterior finish that we're putting on the outside. So normally we cover the foam block with a Tyvek type product. I say Tyvek, that's one of the wonderful products that we use here at Golden Eagle. But what it does allow happen is for moisture to move through, but it keeps the surfaces from being attached to each other.
And that really answers Ed's next question. Ed was wondering if there was any issue with bugs getting between the insulation and the concrete.
Between the insulation and the concrete, no. I don't ever see anything like that. It's bonded so well. Now, concrete shrinks a little bit. The insulation doesn't shrink. But you're not going to see that from the top, bottom, or sides. Or from the top, you'll see it, but once the floor system's on and everything's sealed, generally there's no places for anything to get in between.
Janice was wondering, do we here at Golden Eagle apply borate spray to the logs before they're delivered? And if so, how long, if Janice were to apply it, how long does she need to allow for that borate to dry?
The borate solution is used commonly in areas where we have where posts meet decks, where there's close contact with ground, that type of thing. The borate, we actually do either a pressure-treated borate, which is done in a more of almost like the green pressure-treated lumber or woolmanized lumber that you remember seeing. It can be pressure-treated and it can also be dipped. All of our posts and products like that that come in contact with the ground or near the ground are borate dipped. So we take our dry log and we dip it into a borate solution for an extended period of time, anytime ranging up to, let's say, 30 minutes, and that'll soak up everything that it can. Now, when self-applying borate solution, I would definitely go with the manufacturer, whoever you're getting it from. I would go with their recommendations on that, just because I don't want to tell you something when that aspect comes in where you're applying the borate solution yourself. Now, the stains and finishes that we use on the exterior are also treating the logs, so that's very, very important to know. Now, the borate solutions generally don't change the color of the stain, so it's more of a clear type solution, and you're not getting any difference in look once it's stained as compared to an untreated area.
And what's great, Janice, is that we're already going to apply that borate solution to the logs if they need it. And so we already do that in all of our log posts. And it's simply an investment in your home. We're a family business. We've been around for 51 years. We'll be around for another 50 plus years. And so you won't be calling us in 50 years wondering, what's going on with your posts, because they'll be taken care of, because we already did that investment with the borate solution.
And Janice, if you do call in 50 years, I'm hoping to be somewhere else at that point.
Retired.
So yes. So
Brad was wondering, back to talking about foundations, with a concrete block foundation, is there any benefit to filling in that concrete block?
Brad, we used to actually fill the cores with a BB type styrofoam. And that was the way that they used to be insulated. Now the cores, there's going to be certain areas, we call them pilasters, where we're going to pour concrete in with rebar every so many feet of that foundation. Let's say every 6 feet, those cores are open. So when we pour concrete along with the rebar going down into the foundation, we're really creating a pillar of strength there. So depending on the type of soil conditions and that type of thing, those cores are filled in certain areas to provide structure. We no longer fill those. If you can imagine pouring BBs out of a bag and it's windy out, pretty hard to get it down in your foundation. But anyways, it was a very reasonable way to insulate concrete block in the day. Now generally we insulate those blocks with a 2x4 wall on the inside or styrofoam on the outside. But yes, we do pour those cores, or concrete guys do pour those cores to create structural strength in certain areas.
Brad is wondering how the full log interior corners are connected. And Brad, I think for you to be able to visually see it, you should really just go to our YouTube channel and you can see a good construction demonstration on how those interior corners are applied for
Now,
full log homes.
yeah, now as far as the interior corner, let's say you got a square house, they're all outside corners. Now let's say you have a house where you got a bump out, let's say that great room bumps out. That inside corner can be done a couple of different ways. If it's going to be an exposed corner on the inside, we can do a button pass corner. That's where one butts in, the other one passes. We can do a saddle notch or a dovetail, whatever's on the outside I like to do for corners on the inside. But a lot of times what will happen is that'll be a transition area in the house where an interior wall is attaching to it, or we're separating rooms. So we do what we call as a vertical corner. Our vertical corners are, let's say, a 10-inch by 10-inch square corner that goes from the floor all the way up to the ceiling, and they got 2x4 splines in them that the logs attach to and interact with to create a real tight seal around that inside corner. So that's primarily how those corners are done. Our Double Eagle Deluxe home has the button pass corner that that is exposed where the great room meets the dining room. So you can take a look at that on our website.
We have quite a few questions here, Rick.
All right.
All right.
Well, I'm here as long as you guys are. So
I have a question here from Janice. Do you have round vertical posts?
we certainly do, Janice, either in the half log form or the full log form.
All right. David's wondering, are any of the exterior log types of any particular fire rating over another?
As far as the types of log between pine and Doug fir and cedar, the log that has the most cell structure, the stiffest cell structure, or your hardest wood, generally is the hardest one to burn. Not being a fire expert, but I do know that when I build a fire, either in my fireplace or my fire pit, I normally start with kindling, or the small pieces. So the log itself is very much something that you don't start fire with the log, you start it with the smaller pieces. So all logs are very good as far as keeping fire out. Once they get burning, it takes a lot of effort to get them to burn all the way through. It would be like creating a campfire and you're throwing big logs on it to start it. Very hard to get that started. You need the smaller material to do that. But the cell structure, so let's say Doug fir, in my mind, would be a harder wood to start on fire than, let's say, a cedar or a pine. But yet, I don't think it's enough of a reason to pick one over the other.
Cassandra's wondering if it's possible to incorporate an indoor ramp from the ground floor to the basement. And in her basement, she's envisioning herself using a poured foundation.
Oh, Cassandra, definitely. You know, and those are things that when we're talking about doing these homes for folks, we're designing the home for you. We're not selling you a certain package or a certain home. We're not building you a home that everybody else has or has the ability to have. Every home's built and designed, or designed and built and engineered for you, for your property, for the state and local codes, all that type of thing. So we're going to design that home to make it all work for you all individually.
Rick here is wondering, he is a general contractor. So he's got, he already has a few guys that he feels most comfortable buying through them for certain materials. He says here that his brother makes cabinetry. So if Rick wanted to buy cabinetry from his brother, could he do that instead of buying it from us?
Absolutely, Rick. I love the name, by the way. It really fits with tonight's conversation. Anyways, yeah, as far as being a contractor, being a general contractor, having people in the industry, sometimes certain things are very much negotiable as far as what you want us to provide or you're providing. I will tell you this, that as a general contractor building homes for people, conventional homes or partial log homes where people are providing different materials and all that type of stuff, what I find is the complete materials package or something thereabouts. Maybe your relative is providing the the kitchen cabinets or the plumbing, maybe your cousin's a plumber, or whatever the case may be. A lot of times that'll work out real good. Where we start running into issues is if somebody is just say getting the logs or getting the shell, and now as a builder, we've got to try to figure out as a homeowner, what do they want here? What do they want there? Sometimes there gets to be confusion in how things are done or how things are put together. How are these going to attach to this? What thickness of door jamb? Do the hinges match the door stops? Do they match the handles? Is the faucet correct for the vanity top? There's a lot of things that go into homes, and at Golden Eagle we try to make things very easy with our complete package, the complete system of everything's basically picked out prior to any construction starting. So the cool part is you know what those costs are before starting the home. We're not, as a builder, you're not asking the homeowner to, we got to make those cabinet choices, we got to know where to put this window, and it's a log wall, so that's one of the first things to go up. So if you have the kitchen designed already, certain things like that, sometimes that complete package is needs to be thought about very, very deeply. But yes, we see it all the time where we have people that do certain things, and the nice part about the complete package is somebody who doesn't have connections, everything's taken care of for them. So we definitely work with you in those situations.
Mm-hmm. By the way, Bob has a terrific comment here. He says that this should be required viewing before every conversation, every first conversation.
Well, Bob, thank you so much. And I tell you, there's so much to talk about in the industry that I could go on for days. And I know you know, I got time. I've had about 11 cups of coffee, besides a couple bathroom breaks. I can keep going. No, I'm kidding. But what I sure appreciate that, Bob. But us here at Golden Eagle have so much information to share with you, and so many different people do wonderful things here that working with a company like ours, I got to tell you, is it's a wealth of information. We sure try to make things work out well for you. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Annette's wondering if we help customers find builders in their area.
Yes, definitely, Annette. After being in business for 51 years, we've got a wonderful network of builders throughout the country. Builders, suppliers, different, you know, plumbing, heating, electrical guys. That's my thing, plumbing, heating, electrical guys. I just like saying it like that, but coffee's kicking in. Anyways, yes, we like to match you up with somebody that you feel comfortable with. So a lot of times it's not just one person in the area that we can work with you on. We can set you up with a few different ones so that price-wise it works, you feel comfortable with them, and they've done our project before. You don't necessarily want to be the first. So thank you, Annette.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Annette's also wondering what the size of the footing would be, and the size of reinforcing bars in our foundation.
No, great question. And one size does not fit all when it comes to this. I was at one of our projects the other day, and the footing was 52 inches wide underneath the foundation wall, and it was 12.5 inches thick. 12.5. It was a foot and a half thick. It was 18 inches thick, 52 inches wide. So if you picture your sidewalk, if you have one out by the road, at least as wide as your sidewalk, and there was a 12-inch concrete wall sitting on top of it. Huge amount of weight above it. Normal size, 8-inch poured walls, 10-inch poured walls, 10 or 12-inch block walls are very common. As far as the footing size, standard is 4 inches on each side, probably 8 inches to a foot thick. But see, when you're engineering the whole home, we're going to take into consideration soil conditions, weight on it, and all that type of stuff. So it's not a call to make, you know, just by saying this should work. There's very important things to take into consideration. If you've ever been in a home with a failing foundation, nothing worse than that.
Timothy's wondering if there are any variations for the types of fireplace stones that you can use.
Yeah, actually, Timothy, we have 16 different ones in stock here at Golden Eagle, and our manufacturer has probably 40 different ones that are available as well. Virtually all the same price, all figured in the package. They can vary from the inside and the outside. So what I can tell you about cultured stone, we call it, or man-made stone, is the weight of it and also the look of it. The look of it's real, the weight's not. So a lot of times we don't need the structural space. Let's say you got a big stone fireplace going up in your great room. You might not need to have, besides some work in the floor system holding that weight up, you might not have to have a big foundation underneath it screwing up your lower level living. So great question.
Annette has a good question here. She's wondering, for full log wall systems, how do you connect the first course into the floor?
Oh, great question, Annette. The floor system is connected to a sill plate on the top of the foundation. So the floor system's attached directly to the sill plate, and then the floor system has a floor sheeting on top of it. But the floor itself, those 2x10 floor joists or 2x12 floor joists, the eye joists, or even the floor trusses will have what we call squash blocks on either side. Generally not in the floor truss, but in the eye joist and the regular framing, we put vertical 2x4s on each side of it to make that a little beefier area. And then we screw, depending on the thickness of the log, we screw directly down into that floor joist or its squash block. So everything is tied together. Sometimes in certain situations there is a threaded rod that will come up from the foundation through the floor and into one or multiple courses of logs to keep everything tied together. It all depends on the area in which you're building. California and out west, where we have the earth shakes every now and then, things are done a little differently than, let's say, in the Midwest or south central U.S. So different areas are going to have different ways to hook it together, but basically everything's tied together.
All right, Joe here is wondering, what is the typical process to getting started?
Well, a good step was tonight, Joe, and what I would always tell people to do is spend some time on our website and kind of go through looking at different plans and stuff. It's important to come up with an idea of what you think you want to spend on the home. And what I mean by that is turnkey. Do you have property yet? Are you thinking about property? Sometimes if you have property, it can limit us to what you can build as far as size goes, but it can also limit you to as far as value. At Golden Eagle, we can always fit you into those size restrictions maybe, or also value concerns. If you don't have property, a lot of times you can find out what the house is going to cost and then come up with an idea on what you want to spend on the property. So there's a few different ways to do it. The website's a wonderful way to look into it. But what I would suggest doing is calling Golden Eagle here, talking to one of the salesmen, and just getting a feel for how the process works. We do have some previous webinars called the ABCs, different design techniques, and a few other ones that going back and watching those is important. You'll find that we try to make this process as enjoyable as possible. So, great question.
Mm-hmm. Boy, we're getting a lot of questions coming in here, right?
Absolutely, that's great.
Another great one here is for full log wall systems, can you intermix a D-shaped log with a super round, double round, where it's round on both sides?
Yeah, it depends on the location and the start and stop points. If I'm coming to a outside corner, I actually like to use a vertical corner in that situation where we're changing. You know, depending on the situation and which corner type, you know, sometimes we can make the D come with a button pass come into the round. We used to do that on site as a builder quite often. We were able to do that just by changing the pattern where they come together. But that vertical corner allows a little bit of freedom as far as changing logs up.
I see a question here from David, and David's wondering if we'll be in Gatlinburg at the Log and Timber Show next weekend.
Absolutely, David. You know, as you know, Gatlinburg suffered a lot of losses as far as homes go, and it's a great area for log homes. I had gone through that area last fall going to Asheville to a show, Asheville, North Carolina. And as I was going through, I was thinking, man, this is just a beautiful place, the Smokies, you know, and all that. And it wasn't 3 weeks later then all that took place there. But we'll have a wonderful, one of our sales, or a couple of our sales, Zach's going to be here, and Jan, one of our other salesmen, will be there. And they can definitely show you our product and a lot of things that we have to offer. So great show. It's a great way. I urge people, too, to look around at other companies and that type of thing. You know, don't be afraid. What you're going to find is Golden Eagle puts prices on our website. We're going to tell you what we think that home's going to cost. A lot of people don't. And why is that? Because they don't sell the whole package. They don't sell the complete turnkey deal where Golden Eagle, we know what you're doing. So it's one of those things where we're able to provide great pricing. Or great pricing as far as what you're, obviously we give great pricing, but as far as giving you a good idea on what your costs are, even just on the website.
And David, I'll follow up with you after this webinar. You'll be receiving an email from me tomorrow because I will be in Gatlinburg. So if there's anything you'd like to review, we can review that in person. And also through the show, they're doing a promotion for free tickets. So we'll be able to set you up with that if you don't have them already.
And if anybody else sees a show in their area that they'd like to attend, or you know, want to come up and visit us at Golden Eagle here, we offer a thing called Travel Bucks, We like to get you here to show you the whole plant, give you the whole tour of the place. Our model home, we got an 8,000 square foot carpeted showroom where you can literally pick everything out. I tell people you can feel the stone, you can get a first-hand look at it with the colors of the log and the style of the roof, and put everything together right down to your faucets and tubs and showers and toilets. You can even sit on them. You can't use the toilet, but you can sit on them and get the feel if you like it or not. So it's important to be able to visualize all this stuff. So we've got a great showroom here, and then of course our manufacturing plant. We get tours every day, and it's just wonderful to see how all this works.
Janice is wondering, on the website she's come across an area where it talks about us being able to buy in bulk and with doing a winter buying.
Yeah, Janice, we actually, picture this, guys. Every 3.65 days on average, somebody moves into their Golden Eagle log home or timber home. So when we think about that, that's 100 homes a year nationwide. So our buying power and the quantities of things we buy is very important. So we're not just, we are a mom and pop outfit because my mom and pop started it, but we're a big company that has family values and family roots that will be able to provide great costs. A company doesn't stay in business 50 years without 51 years without doing things right and having good pricing. So rest assured there.
I have another question here. Looks like Annette will be building in 2 years, and she is wondering when should she get started on her design process?
As far as the design process and that can start any time here. What I like to do is, the last thing I want to do is be pushing it at the end. I like people to get in early and start talking about their process, what they're thinking about doing. We got 50 standard plans in our plan book they're priced out materials package wise, but we got at least 1,000 or 1,200 on our website. So a lot of times what we can do is we can find something that's kind of similar to what you're thinking prior to drawing any plans up or anything like that, so we can get pointed in a direction for your pricing and all that type of stuff. As far as the design goes and that type of thing, we want to know what your property's like and all that, but yet we want to be able to get you in a direction early on so that if we need to change directions or increase the price, decrease the price, we're able to have time to do that. So what you're doing today, starting here, folks, is wonderful no matter what your timing.
Cassandra wants to build on a piece of land that already has an existing home. And that existing home doesn't have any other good place for a perk test, so they're going to need to reuse where the current septic is.
Yep, and that's definitely something that you would want to talk to a local septic system company about it. You can call your county and get names of different people who are in the soil testing type situation. Maybe your septic system or that septic system is still viable, still good. Maybe it needs a new tank, maybe it needs a different drain field. But those are things. If did she buy the property yet at this point, or is she looking at buying it? A couple different thoughts there is, if you haven't bought the property yet, make it part of your contingency to find out what type of septic system is there and what type of viability it has. If you own it already, no, absolutely no problem. Half the work's done. You already own the property. So, but we want to find out what you're able to do. And a lot of times that'll somebody will have to come out and inspect. So there will be dollars exchanging hands there with your local sanitary provider, and pretty much the county, Home Builders Association, or depending on your area, you're going to be able to find somebody who does that for you. And it's fairly reasonable to have done.
Well, Rick, we still have quite a few people here, but the questions have died down. So unless anyone else has a question.
We're going to roll up here a little bit and see what we got here, or have we already kind of gone through that? Gosh, guys, I certainly appreciate your time. And, if it was pre-owned lot she has, and so Cassandra, yeah, you've got the property. I would just have somebody come out and give you a good idea on what that is, what you've got, what you're dealing with, and that'll help us, of course, with cost and also design, possible design limitations or that type of thing. So, everyone, I certainly appreciate everybody's time. I see go get a beer from one guy, and or maybe he's going to get a beer. Folks, I love talking to you, and I love the experience of being able to help you out with all the information that I got around in this brain. You can imagine doing this forever. There's just so much in there. You got to get it out. So thanks for listening, and have a great week.
Terrific. Thank you, everybody.